All right, guys, we're going to do number 10 on the Unit 1 extra practice review. And I don't know what happened when I placed this into Notability on the iPad, the equations didn't show up for 10 and 11. So if that happens to you, go back to the Canvas page, click on the preview of the paper, extra practice paper review, and it'll show up. Okay? So the question is supposed to read, solve the square root of 2x minus 1 plus 2 equals x. So when I have a square root, I want to isolate it. So what I'm going to do is get the square root of 2x minus 1 by itself, and I'm going to move the plus 2 over the other side. So the other side should be x minus 2. Now, to get rid of a square root, I have to square it. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Okay, so I get 2x minus 1 equals x minus 2 times x minus 2. 2x minus 1 equals, now I'm going to distribute x times x, x squared. X times negative 2, negative 2x. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and finally negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. So I get x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 2x minus 1. Now I see I have a quadratic. So what I'm going to do is move all these terms over to the right-hand side, and the reason why I'm doing that is because x squared is positive there, okay? So I'm going to move the 2x over, so that becomes a negative 2x. And negative 2x minus 4x is negative 6x. And then I'm going to move the 1 over. It's negative 1. So I'm going to add 1 to 4, which gives me 5. So I get x squared minus 6x plus 5. Now I can factor that out, x and x. My end term is positive, so my signs are the same. They're whatever the middle term is. And I only have one possibility for factors of 5 because 5 is prime, and that's 1 times 5. And negative 1 plus negative 5, it gives me a negative 6x, so it checks out. Okay, my next step is to solve for both of these. So x equals 5 and x equals 1. Now before I accept this, I need to plug in the values and see if they work. So I'm going to do x equals 5 first. So when I do that, I get the square root of 2 times 5 minus 1 underneath the radical plus 2 equals 5. 2 times 5 is 10, minus 1 is 9. Square root of 9 is 3. 3 plus 2 equals 5. This checks out. So I can accept this answer, x equals 5. Okay, now I'm going to do the other one. X equals 1. So that gives me the square root of 2 times 1 minus 1 plus 2. Does that equal 1? So 2 times 1 is 2, minus 1 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. 1 plus 2 equals 3, which does not equal 1. Okay? So that means that x equals 1 is not a viable solution. So I cannot include it in the solution set. So these ones you have to check. So the only answer that works is x equals 5. All right, let's look at number 11. So number 11 says the square root of 3x plus 1 minus the square root of x plus 4 equals 1. So again, I have to isolate the square root. And by the way, I have 2 square roots, right? So when I move this one over the other side, instead of a negative radical x plus 4, I get a positive radical x plus 4. So positive square root of x plus 4. And then plus 1 on the right-hand side. Okay, so same rules work. We're going to square both sides. So to get rid of a square root, I have to square it. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Okay? So on this left-hand side, it's pretty straightforward. It's 3x plus 1. So I'm done with that pretty quick. However, on my right-hand side, I have to do some work. So I am going to do square root of x plus 4 plus 1 times the square root of x plus 4 plus 1. Now I'm going to distribute. The square root of x plus 4 times the square root of x plus 4 is just x plus 4. Now I take 1 times the square root of x plus 4 is the square root of x plus 4. I do that again. 1 times the square root of x plus 4 is the square root of x plus 4. And finally, 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, so I get 3x plus 1, x plus 4, 4 and 1 is 5, so x plus 5 plus 2 square roots of x plus 4. And what I just did there was combined like terms. Okay, so now I have 3x plus 1 equals x plus 5 plus 2 square roots of x plus 4. So I have to do all this process over again. I'm going to have to isolate the square root. Okay, so in order to do that, I need to move the x over. So I'm going to subtract x off of both sides. I'm also going to subtract 5 off of both sides. So when I do that, I get 2x minus 4 equals 2 square roots of x plus 4. Again, I have to get the square root by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And when I do that, I get x minus 2. Because 2 divided by 2 is 1x, and negative 4 divided by 2 is a negative 2. And this equals the square root of x plus 4. Okay, at this point, I have to square both sides. So the square root of x plus 4 squared equals x minus 2 squared. This left-hand side becomes x minus 2 times x minus 2, and the right-hand side becomes x plus 4. So I'm going to have to distribute the left-hand side to get x times x, which is x squared, x times negative 2, which is negative 2x, negative 2 times x is negative 2x, and then negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. Now that side, which gives me x squared minus 4x plus 4, is equal to x plus 4. Again, I have a quadratic, so I'm going to subtract the x off of both sides, and I'm also going to subtract the 4 off of both sides. When I do that, I get x squared minus 5x, and that equals 0. And I'm just going to check my work really quick, make sure I didn't make a mistake. Okay. All right, so I factor out an x, and I'm left with x minus 5 equals 0. Set this equal to 0, I get x equals 0, and x minus 5 equals 0. X equals 5. Okay, before I accept these answers of x equals 0 and x equals 5, I have to check them. So let's check x equals 0. So I get the square root of 3 times 0 plus 1 minus 0 plus 4. Does that equal 1? Okay, 3 times 0 is 0 plus 1. Square root of 1 is 1. 0 plus 4 underneath that radical is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. So I actually get a negative 1. Negative 1 does not equal 1. So that x equals 0 doesn't work. So we can conclude that this is not a viable solution. Okay, let's try the other one. I'm going to plug in x equals 5. So back into the original equation, 3 times 5 plus 1 underneath the radical minus 5 plus 4. Does that equal 1? 3 times 5 is 15. 15 and 1 is 16. The square root of 16 is 4. And 5 plus 4 is 9. The square root of 9 is 3. So 4 minus 3 is 1. 1 does equal 1. Okay, so the answer I got, the one that works, is x equals 5. So again, when you're dealing with the square roots and you have to solve them, you have to check it. Okay, because look at the last two, one of the answers did not work. Okay, I'm going to stop the video here because those two took a while to explain. So that was questions 10 and 11 from the unit review number 1.